And today we are here to discuss the new development about olive branch operation or Afrin operation that Turkey entered into this one of the PKK PYD canton that they took over a couple of years ago, and it's a game changer in a way that changes the relations with the central government, with Russia, with the US, with also more active role with the PKK and the de facto semi-pseudo-state or transformation of this group from a militia to more like a state type of foundation. Turkey, of course, is against that, and that's why we see Turkey entered into the territory. And today we will discuss in detail. We have Mr. Oytun Orhan. He's one of our Syria experts here. He's following the situation on the ground very closely, and he's very much involved in the debates in the national and international media about the developments also. We will start with him, and we also have Dr. Bora Bayraktar that he will explain more, maybe more general implications of this development. Mr. Oytun will start with the more specific about the situation in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to start by welcoming you all. Thanks for coming to our first event in the new year. In my presentation, I will firstly try to discuss very briefly the process that led to the olive branch operation, in which context that operation was conducted. And secondly, I will try to analyze the position of the actors that are involved, that are influential in this operation, mainly, of course, Turkey and also Russia, US, regime, of course, Iran, and also YPG. What are their main position towards that operation? And then afterwards, I will try to briefly introduce the operational process, how it is going, what are the difficulties, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the Turkish military while conducting that military operation. And at the last part, I will try to again try to foresee what could happen regarding the alliances between the so-called actors in the northern Syria. What could be the alliances after Afrin operation? Because as our chairman told, it will critically affect and probably the actors will reconsider their positions after that operation. So we think that it could be a game changer. So starting with the process that led to the Afrin operation, actually, as all we know, it was within the context of the European Shield operation. When this operation started, the Turkish decision makers already stated that Turkish army will, and FSA will control nearly a 5,000 kilometer square area. So that area was, of course, including Manbij and also Afrin. And as soon as Al-Bab was taken from ISIS, the Turkish officials stated that the next target will be Manbij. And just after that, Russian and regime forces deployed on the border of Manbij between the European Shield area. And then this, of course, complicated the situation, so that the next target was Afrin. This was also publicly stated. And the day after, again, the Russian soldiers deployed in Afrin area, and they established some observation points. So this complicated the situation. So the Afrin area was always in Turkish armies and Turkey's radar. But as long as the conditions, the environment on the ground is not suitable to conduct a military operation, it was not cancelled but postponed. So since then, Turkish diplomacy and politicians are trying to create an environment which the risks are not eliminated, but at least reduced. So as all we know, there is Russian influence, although YPG is mainly supported by US. In Afrin area, there is no US military entity, and the Syrian airspace is mainly controlled by the Russians, so that Turkey tried to deepen its cooperation with the Russians in that regard. So the de-escalation zones, the Astana process, and also the Sochi Congress was always in that context. So Turkish side contributed to those processes. Idlib was a main concern for the Russians, and they depend on Turkish contribution. So that against that, Turkey was asking for flexibility, so to say, to conduct a military operation in Afrin. So there was an increasing pressure over the Russians. But for the Russians, it was a bargaining chip actually against Turkey to take some concessions in Syria. And as all we know, the nature of the relationship between Russia and Turkey in Syria is not based on a long-term alliance, but it's like take and give style relationship. I mean, every side has their leverage, on some areas and on some issues, and in some cases, Turkish side contributes to Russian and facilitates Russian moves, and against that, Russians are also facilitating the Turkish moves in Syria. So it was going like that. In the context of the Idlib de-escalation zone agreement, Turkey was asking to take a green light also for the Afrin operation. And as soon as the regime Iranian and Russian Idlib operation started, which ended with the taking of El Bulduhur air base, Turkish side increased its pressure over Russia to start an Afrin operation, but still, as I said, it was seen as a bargaining chip, so they were trying to take more from the Turkish side. But I think from the Russian side, they finally understood that it is coming. I mean, whether there is Russian approval or not, Turkish side will take that risk and will start a military operation. It is mostly argued that Turkish side has given some concessions at the latest Fidan and Akar's visit to Moscow, that Turkish side has given some concessions regarding maybe Sochi Congress or Idlib. But from my side, could be true, which I don't know, as they were all closed meetings. But from my understanding, the main Russian intention was to create some tension between US and YPG, and also US and Turkey, so that they, and besides Turkish move is coming, whether there is Russian green light, so that they try to transform that period process as a way to serve their interests. I think by giving green light, they knew that they will give or teach a lesson to the YPG. They were also critical. Russians were critical about the YPG's total dependence to US. I think they want to show that the US side cannot protect you. It's me, actually, who can protect you in that region. So, by giving that green light, they realized that this process could lead to some anger within YPG, and actually this was the result. You know, the YPG side was angry to Russia because of their approval, but other than that, when you look at the internal debates within PYD, they also accuse the US side for not protecting. And actually, probably it was a surprise for them. They were thinking that the US side somehow will protect them. And we now see that that was a probably true Russian calculation, and now there is a recalculation, reconsideration within YPG to make new alliances. Now they are talking to call Syrian regime's support in Afrin area, that which could also affect their alliance in Wim, which we will discuss this later. And also, of course, between Turkey and US, because as all we know, the next target will be Manbij. And Manbij is not a Russian influence area, it's a US influence area. And by giving that green light, the Turkish next move will be Manbij, so Turkish two NATO allies will confront each other. That's a big opportunity for the Russian side. And when we look at the regime and Iranian intentions, we also do not see that they are raising their voice too much. I think their calculation is like that. And the FSA and YPG, they are both threats. They define as terrorist organizations, both sides. And when but they have a priority list, and probably at the top of their priority list, FSA is the first, and probably YPG is the last one. But if these two threats are fighting each other, that could be something beneficial for their goals. And as YPG has become a big headache for them, because as all we know, at the beginning of the Syrian civil war, there was a tactical alliance between Iran regime and also YPG. But now they see that this alliance has become a big headache, and now they are controlling the nearly one third of the Syrian territory, and controlling nearly half, more than half, 50% of the Syrian resources. And the latest statement, which came from the US side, that they are going to establish a border control force, mainly from YPG elements, that also triggered some concerns within those regional actors, so that I think they are not raising their voice too much against Afrin operation. And besides, mainly the regime, they think that in case the Turkish pressure over YPG increases, then they will have to reconcile with themselves and will ask for regime support. So this process could lead to regime return without shooting any bullets in the YPG controlled areas. As all we know, the PYD people publicly stated that the Russians asked them to leave the Afrin area to regime, but they refused, and they said we will resist and fight. But this shows the Russian plan. Probably they think that in case Turkey increases the pressure, and as long as the YPG understands that there is no opportunity to protect the city, they will ask for regime return to that area. So, in that sense, the regime side could consider this operation as an opportunity, but of course this has limits, because they also do not trust the FSA forces and also Turkish intentions. So they have limits. They will try to transform this process to an opportunity. So when we look at the Turkish goals, these are the main intention of other actors, but what about the Turkish goals? Of course, Turkey wants to end the territorial control of YPG, wherever it is, because Turkey considers that the borders of the YPG, in the long run, these de facto borders could be the official, in quotation, the official borders of the federal region controlled by YPG. So wherever it is, should be eliminated. Doesn't matter whether it is Afrin or Manbij or Kamışlı. So why Afrin? Because there is a window of opportunity in Afrin. Because Turkish side tried to negotiate with the US side to take some concessions, but there were no maneuver field to take something. But as I said, for the Russians, it's like take and give. So at least you can take some concessions from the Russian side. So there was an opportunity. Turkish side wanted to use that. But of course, other than that, Afrin is crucial for Turkey. because the PKK activities, mainly Hatay, are mainly originated from the Afrin area. It is not related with the civil war. Even before the civil war, the PKK existence, terrorist activities in Hatay was mainly coming from the Afrin border. So by controlling this border area, Turkey wants to not eliminate, but at least reduce the risk coming from that border area. And besides, the Afrin was like a hub for PKK, YPG to recruit more militants. Now Turkey wants also to control this process. And of course, in order to be powerful on the table, you have to be powerful on the field, especially in the case of Syria. By doing so, probably Turkey considers that it will have a big influence in the Sochi or Geneva conference. So that Afrin operation is crucial. And where will it go? As the Turkish official states, it will end whenever the PKK control and the whole PKK elements are eliminated in Afrin. But of course, there are risks at the operational level. If you compare it with the European Shield operation, there are some disadvantages. First of all, the geography. As all we know, Afrin is a mountainous area. It's not like the European Shield zone. So it gives opportunity for PKK to conduct hit and run style attacks against Turkish army. And also it makes harder for Turkish army to advance rapidly. Secondly, of course, the militant numbers. In the European Shield operation, until Elbap, there was no huge ISIS resistance, only in Elbap, and even in Elbap, probably there were 2,000 or 3,000 ISIS militants. But in the Afrin case, as all we know, Turkish Prime Minister said 8,000, but could be between 8 and 10,000 YPG militants. And they are as motivated as ISIS militants, so this also complicates the situation for Turkish intervention. And also the firepower. There are claims that they have very advanced weaponry, which they get from the fight against ISIS, even manpads and anti-tank missiles. So probably Turkish army is trying to be careful about the firepower of YPG. And lastly, the weather conditions. It's also making hard for the Turkish army to advance rapidly. But of course, there are also some advantages when we compare with the European Shield operation. We have coordination with the Russian side. This not eliminates, but reduces the risks for confronting each other or any accidents in the operation. And the European Shield operation was conducted just after the military coup attempt, so it was not as well prepared as the Afrin operation. When we see the Afrin operation, the FSA forces, both the FSA forces and also Turkish army is well prepared. The first day they targeted tens of YPG targets, so it was well prepared. And when you look at the FSA forces, the Turkish Army's training program in European Shield is going on, and there are more than 20,000 FSA fighters. And when you just look at them, you can easily see that they are more professional. Not the way they look only, but also the way they behave to the civilians in the region. So it is better, not perfect, but could be better. So FSA's capacity, when we compare with the European Shield, is better. And also another advantage is the Turkish-made weapons. Now in that operation, the most of the weaponry used by Turkish army are all, not all, but mainly Turkish-made. So this also gives a free hand for the Turkish army to conduct its military operation. So what is going to be the military goal of the operation? As I said, it's eliminating all elements of PKK, but probably because of the risks that I mentioned, probably at the first phase they will try to encircle the city, but not entering the city center. After encircling the city, probably at the second phase they will reconsider the situation, and on that basis they will enter or the city, or push YPG to leave the city. Of course, when we come to that phase, there could be some alternative scenarios, but probably Turkish army will not prefer to enter the city because it's a populated area. Not only the locals, but also the internal displaced persons. More than 500, 600,000 people moved to Afrin area, so there's a huge civilian population. And as Turkish army is trying to be sensitive about the civilian losses, the air attacks could not be an option. And urban warfare, it is something that PKK knows very well, and we know that you can still succeed, but the costs could be high. So it's not the first option, but probably they will reconsider it when this stage comes. But if this succeeds, I mean, if Turkey succeeds to encircle the Afrin city center, probably there could be there are two scenarios. Of course, the first scenario is the Turkish further advancement and taking Afrin city. But the more probable scenario, which I mainly argue in my op-eds, is the possible YPG-Syria regime agreement. They could ask regime forces to return to undermine Turkish efforts. So probably this will complicate Turkey's efforts. So, and lastly, Afrin and aftermath, how could the alliances could shape after the Afrin operation. First of all, Turkish side showed that she is ready to use its military power, and there is a will to use it even in other areas. So this will probably strengthen and empower Turkey's position when talking with the other actors. And as I said before, this move will also affect the US position. Neither side wants to confront each other in Münbić, and in my evaluation they will try to find a way to solve that problem by dialogue. Without military confrontation, avoiding that military confrontation, they will try to find a base to work together. That's the first thing. But if not, Turkish officials states that they will go wherever, whatever the cost is. But still, it is risky. I mean, the US side has some disadvantages in the Münbić area because it seems that they are mainly alone. Neither side is with the US there. The Russians are seeking, as I said, a direct confrontation between Turkey and US. So they could be more eager to push Turkey to move towards Münbić. Again, Iranians and regime side could be more also eager compared with the Afrin operation to push Turkey towards Münbić area. So we could find more allies regarding the Münbić operation. And also the demographic structure in Münbić is also a disadvantageous point for the US side because it's very fragile. The alliance in Münbić is very fragile. If Turkish military advancement moves to that area, that alliance with the Arabs could easily collapse and they could reconsider their position. It's, as all we know, it's a mainly Arab populated area, so there could be some internal challenges from Münbić. So they have disadvantages, but still it is the US. So this will limit Turkish move, and actually nobody knows how will this process will end. And I think that's all. We can go further with your questions. We can debate this issue deeper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Today there was a news about attacks on civilians in Reyhanlı that, or sometimes the PKK also attacks Kilis and other areas that cause major problem for Turkey, security problem, and when Turkey attacked the militants, they try to depict it as an attack on civilians, but PKK has no hesitation to attack also the cities, the regular cities. This is one observation. Plus, Turkey is more eager to, the plan is to contain or to prevent any siege by unwanted organization or state or semi-state or pseudo-state or any type of political formation that siege Turkey from the south. And we have a long Syria border. Syria border is longer than Iraqi borders that goes all the way to the north and to the east. And it is a long border. And PKK is trying to control over all these areas, and Turkey is trying to make holes in this and prevent this, also PKK to reach to the Mediterranean and maybe try to become a viable state without links to the sea and trade. It's almost impossible for PKK. One observation also, the Syrian Kurds are not as many. In Turkey we have more Kurds, but Syrian Kurds are fewer. Plus, most of the Kurds are not with the PKK. They are more conservative in their outlook and in their tendencies than maybe some of the Kurds in Turkey. And still we have both from secular Kurds and conservative Kurds, and generally conservatives are less separatists and want to get along with others. And when we talk about Syria, these are more like a political debates that cause friction between different communities. Actually, Turkey or Arabs or the Turkmens or Kurds don't have a major grudges with each other, but we also Turkey trying to be careful not to cause additional grudges or additional feuds among different tribes, as long as my friend explained, Mr. Oytun explained, try to pay attention to the civilian casualties, and it takes a little bit, it slows down the operation. Now we have both academic and a journalist background. Dr. Bora Bayraktar, he's been in the ground for a long time. Also, he's following the implications of these changes, this Syrian operation, the future of Syria, how it's going to affect the general geopolitics, as well as how it is going to change the alliances, if it is going to change, how it's going to turn out maybe after the Syria, maybe the future of Syria. And we thank you for his coming from Istanbul, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opening. I'm going to try to understand why and how Turkey was able to start this operation, because I think it will help us to understand what's happening and what will happen, because Turkey has always mentioned Afrin as a threat against Turkish security, and even this summer, 6 months ago, we were writing articles in papers and talking about Afrin is going to happen, but we had to wait until this month, and we should understand how Turkey was able to start it, because the United States, obviously, they are not happy, neither Russia nor Germany. When you look at Iranian media, they are not happy with Turkish operation against PKK, PYD, but somehow they didn't stop it, or they couldn't stop it. So there must be some weaknesses in this among these countries which enable Turkey to seize this opportunity. I'll start with the United States. I see the weaknesses of US policy in Syria as follows. First of all, and mainly, I think the strategic goals of the United States in the region and tactical methods, they don't match. First of all, I mean, this is obvious. The goals of the United States in the region, we all know, everybody knows it, even you ask a person in the street. Gulf region is important because there is a global rivalry, and the United States recently declared a national security strategy in which they said China and Russia are rival powers. So in this rivalry, the United States has to control oil and gas routes. They have to keep their military bases in the Middle East, and also the question of Iran, they have to contain Iran, and if you are looking for these goals, I mean, all the signs directs you to Turkey. You have to work with Turkey, because you cannot contain Iran without Turkey. You cannot stop Russian expansion without Turkey. You cannot have your bases safe without Turkey. But this is not the case. I mean, what the United States is doing is just the reverse. Blocking Russian expansion. We know in 2014 Russia was able to annex Crimea, which enabled Russia to use its Black Sea Navy, and which enabled Russia to start its military operation in Syria on September 30th, 2015. So without Crimea, Russia wouldn't be able to do operation in Syria. So there is a problem in that. So I think also Israel security is one of the goals of the United States. So to reach this end, as I told you, as former US leaders did, I think they have to work with Turkey. But what the United States is doing is quarreling with Turkey all the time about PKK, Gülen, FETÖ, as we say in Turkey, the Gülen terrorist organization. Turkey doesn't see US next to it against these threats, and also the United States is supporting an organization whose legitimacy is in question because it is considered as affiliated group of PKK, which is a terrorist organization for Turkey, US, and European Union. So their legitimacy is in question, and their connection and affiliation was clear in Raqqa for those who didn't want to accept it when they opened photos of Öcalan in Raqqa main square. And also I think the capacity of PYD-PKK is in question because it's a repressive organization, it's Marxist, as Mr. Uysal said, in a region where most people are devout Muslims, even Kurds. So their ideology doesn't match with the realities of the people living in Syria. So I don't think it is wise to work with these guys, these terrorist groups against Turkey and other groups. So they don't represent all Kurds. We should underline this. So it's a problem, and even we see they are forcefully recruiting kids, people under 18 years old. So these are great problems which makes US policy unsustainable, and these weaknesses, I think, provided the ground for Turkey to challenge US. And also we should underline that the United States many times said they don't care with Afrin in the west of Euphrates River. So I think this enabled Turkey to go on and start this operation. When we look at Russia, So how did they let Turkey to start Afrin operation, and how did they open airspace of Syria to Turkish military forces, air forces? Again, I want to check their goals, strategic goals. They want to be a global power. To reach this goal, they are trying to build a strong navy which can operate in 2 oceans. And for this reason, they are looking for bases in Mediterranean. They want to counter NATO expansion, and they, initiated Georgia war and Ukraine crisis. So these are their goals. So for these goals, they need, as I told you, secure bases, not only opening bases as they did in Syria, but they need to protect them all the time. So these are permanent bases, so you need permanent protection, permanent security. So from this point of view, and when you consider the proximity of these military bases to Turkish territory and Afrin region, opposition ground, so Russians also need Turkish support, which was clear, because I think at the end of December, Russians were planning to solve Idlib problem by themselves, but after the attack on Hümeynim Air Base, and after they failed to control Idlib with Syrian army, I think they realized that they need Turkey, so they also agreed, and they couldn't stop Turkish operation. And also, when we look at last year, I mean starting from August 8 or 9, when President Erdogan visited St. Petersburg and met with Vladimir Putin, and after that Turkey was able to start Euphrates Shield operation, and Moscow Declaration, December 9, Russians have seen that working with Turkey works. The ground for Turkish-Russian relationship, a close relationship, is keeping Syrian territorial integrity. With the support of Turkey, Russians were able to focus their operation last year in the east. They were able to reach Euphrates River. They were able to liberate Palmyra and Deir Zur, and now they reached border of Iraq. So they think it works. They secured Aleppo in return for Euphrates Shield place. So they also need Turkey in Idlib. They also need Turkey, as we have seen yesterday in Sochi, the great chaos in Sochi Congress between regime and Syrian opposition groups. So they need somebody to take care of Syrian opposition, and it is Turkey. So I think this ground helped Turkey to get Russian consent, at least. This is important. And Iran, another problem, another actor in Syria. When we look at their ground strategy, great strategy, master plan, they challenge United States and Israel in the region. For this, they have to keep logistic lines open from Iran to Lebanon and Palestine. They also want to squeeze Saudis in their oil trade. You know, they control Hormuz Strait in the Gulf. Now they are fighting in Yemen for Bab el-Mandeb, another choke point for oil trade. And Saudis are looking for bringing their gas and oil from Gulf region to Red Sea or Mediterranean. So I think they also want to squeeze Saudis And for this reason, they also they need to be in Eastern Mediterranean, and they try to keep Assad in power. But at the same time, it is hard to deal with big powers, and Iranians need Turkey to check Russian power or counterbalance Russia in Syria. They also problems inside. They have also problems inside Iran, as we have seen. So people are not happy with financing other wars. So probably to diminish cost of Syrian war, they realized that they need Turkish support, and also they had to say okay, or they didn't resist Turkish operation. From Turkish point of view, why Turkey started this operation, Mr. Orhan explained it very well, but I have also something to say. It is a strategic challenge to Turkey's survival. That's the PKK, PYD existence at the border of Turkey. It is regarded as a survival challenge against Turkish national security. It is a terror base, and it can expand. Because last year, this time, these days of 2017, PYD was controlling very small area, but with the support of the United States, now they control fourth of Syria. So same thing can happen in Afrin, and Turkey cannot take this risk and act it. These places could hit Turkey permanently. As again, Mr. Orhan said, it was a recruiting zone for the organization. They used it as human resources. They infiltrated Turkey and challenged Hatay, Iskenderun, Mersin triangle from Amanos Mountains. So the threat was real, and Turkey wanted to end it. Also, Turkey wanted to end corridor project. We say in Turkey it's terror project, PYD project. Some people call it Kurdish corridor. But Afrin was west point of it, and if Afrin is no longer PYD area, then the project is dead. So again, Turkey wants to keep its ties open with the Arab world. So a kind of corridor blocking Turkey to reach Middle East would push Turkey back to its space. Again, about Syrian internal politics, I think with the liberation of Afrin from this organization and putting Syrians back to their place will create a zone of opposition which have a territorial contiguity from Euphrates River to regime-held area in Latakia. So I think these were the background behind operation, the global aspect of it. And what is next? Maybe I can say something a little bit about it. I think Turkey now applies a new concept against war on terror. Fight with the terrorist organization at or in their bases, not in Turkey. So this is related to this. Do not allow terror bases around the border. Do not allow territorial control to, these organizations, no PYD, no PKK, no ISIS zone around Turkey or within Turkey. So according to this understanding, Turkey now is initiating or continuing 4 wars, 4 battles right now. One in Turkey against PKK, starting from 2015. After the collapse of the peace process between Turkey and the PKK. Within Turkey, within Iraq, every day we hear news from the Turkish military. Turkey is hitting bases in northern Iraq. Third is Euphrates Shield area. Right now there is no operation going on, but Turkey is permanently there to keep the area safe, and 4 is Afrin. So these are the same part of same war. And next, Manbij, yes, why not? Because it applies to this doctrine. So not only Manbij, I think the east of Euphrates River will also be target for Turkey when the time is right. So Tel Abyad, Kobani, other places, as long as PKK, PYD is there, I think Turkey will not hesitate to act. Again, about the possibility of a problem between United States, I think as long as US supports PYD, there is this risk. I think this has to change, because otherwise, I say this in some other places, Turkey may be the greatest strategic loss for the United States in the Middle East after Iranian Revolution. Okay, you can find this exaggeration, but it can happen. We have seen many radical decisions from different countries. I think this is also a possibility. So I want to finish with these words. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Bora, for the talk. You mentioned about survival issue, the matter of survival for Turkey, and the new concept of fighting on terror in its ground, doesn't wait for the terror to come to Turkey. Now it's also securing the borders. I personally see it, PKK, as a version of Baas regime. It is secular nationalism. I see it Kurdish Baas. Yeah, it's not fair to call them representing Kurds, or it's not representing a Kurd, but it's a type of ideology and the way of organization. It is a vast type of organization, and both Arabs, Kurds, and Turkmens and other groups, Yazidis also, suffered from the Baas regime in Iraq or in Syria for a long time. So, interestingly and weirdly, America proposes the same model to the local people, Arabs or Kurds. Instead of the Arab Baas, they are offering a Kurdish Baas instead of a democratic functioning based on freedom. And PKK has a long record of violences, hiring children to fight, or even kidnapping. There was a big protest in Diyarbakir. The families that their children were kidnapped and taken away to the mountains. There were big movements. And I see this is in the local sense, but in general, after the Arab revolutions, I think the global, especially the American, some neocon styles, they did not see democracy fit to Arabs, so they forget about promoting democracy. They helped counter-revolutionary or anti-democratic camps, and the UAE leads this camp with in all countries from Libya to Yemen to other places. They are leading this anti-democracy camp, and despite their size, they are having free hand in almost everywhere in the Arab world. And so there is the kind of weakening of the Arab world, more or less, we see, and it is also a threat to everybody, which feeds radicalism, violence, poverty, refugees, immigration. All these causes threat to everybody. To Turkey, refugees are a big burden. We want, especially with Afrin, we want at least a couple of thousand Syrians go back to their hometown, and even the Kurds that that are escaped from PKK rule. Now they don't want to go resettle in return to their hometowns. So we want these people that are Arabs that are pushed away from their villages and towns. So we want these people to resettle, but overall the chaos in the Middle East is not a good news for everybody, with possible terror attacks, with refugee influx, with other maybe radical groups using this for recruitment, etc. So, but the division project is working with civil wars, with tribal conflicts, and not only in Syria, in Yemen. There is a big fighting in Yemen that's going to divide Yemen. If we take this in a broader perspective, Yemen is being divided right now. I mean, these fightings are continuing, and we will have probably more, not only South and North Yemen, we will have more, maybe more than 3-4 pieces of Yemen, which will already a failed state, small capabilities. Now you will have more failed Yemen, and maybe expect similar things, in Libya also, the eastern part that's close to Haftar, and Egypt and UAE also, of course, is the main funder. They established a new central bank, despite all the fightings that until 4 or 5 years, they did not establish a separate central bank, but 2 days ago they established a central bank. Probably they are going to divide Libya also, which is a big corridor for refugees, terrorists, and through Italy and Mediterranean. Even for human cost that they sell people to the slavery and other abuses that I think the world should pay attention. So we have a kind of a messy neighborhood, and Turkey is also trying to save and secure its citizens, and I think, when we discuss also Syria, do we go with, I think the Iraqi system failed because of the design of the constitution based on the sectarian plus ethnic. You have Shia, Sunni, you have Kurds and Arabs, and when you have federation, maybe you consider every part is different federation, but you give federation to the Kurds to prepare maybe for an independence, which we see also last year as a kind of a division project, but it failed. But it strengthens the sectarian ethnic lines, or doesn't fit. Now we have elections, and we are, as the center, we are following closely how it's going to work out in the election. Probably we'll have a similar panel or discussion or program like this about Iraqi elections and its effects. But everybody's tired of sectarianism, even ethnicity. People want to live as citizens and human beings that don't care about are you Shia or Sunni or Kurds or Arabs or Turkmens. People want to live, and they got tired of fighting. A lot of, Iraq is a rich country, has a lot of oil and big potential, but its people are suffering. So I just hope that we see the whole region in a broader perspective of a chaotic, conflictual environment that its people also deserves to live in peace. And of course, we have on our part, everybody in the region has responsibility and his share to do better, but also we need the support from the external community, from global community to let them live in a good welfare and peaceful environment.